They say that doing the right thing gets easier with practice, that once you stand up for what you believe in, the next time becomes less frightening. But they're wrong. Sometimes doing the right thing once puts a target on your back. Sometimes it raises expectations so high that any misstep feels like a betrayal. 3 months after I saved David Torres and earned the respect of Dr. Pemberton, I thought the hardest days of my career were behind me. I thought I had proven myself. I thought I could finally breathe easy, but life has a funny way of testing you when you least expect it. My name is Laura Bennett, and this is the story of how 3 hours of courage turned into 3 months of consequences. This is the story of how doing the right thing almost destroyed everything I had worked so hard to build. The autumn had given way to a harsh winter in Cleveland. By December, the city was blanketed in snow, and the emergency department at Metropolitan General Hospital was busier than ever. Slip and fall injuries, car accidents on icy roads, hypothermia cases. The cold brought out the worst in the city, and we were there to pick up the pieces. But something else had changed too. Me. After that night with David Torres, I had become somewhat of a legend in the hospital. Nurses I had never spoken to would stop me in the hallways to tell me they had heard about what I did. Young residents asked for my opinion during rounds. Even some of the attending physicians treated me with a new level of respect. Dr. Pemberton and I had developed a genuine working relationship. He still had his moments of arrogance, but now he listened. He asked questions. He valued input from the nursing staff in ways he never had before. We had become a team, and honestly, it felt good. But not everyone was happy about my newfound status. There were whispers in the break room, subtle comments about how I had gotten lucky, how anyone could have caught that pneumothorax if they had been paying attention. Some nurses felt I had made them look bad by challenging a doctor so publicly. Others thought I was becoming too confident, too willing to question authority. Jennifer, my friend and colleague, warned me to be careful. She said that when you stand out, people start watching you more closely, waiting for you to fail. I brushed it off at the time. I figured if I just kept doing good work, kept advocating for my patients, everything would be fine. I had no idea that a single patient would soon walk through those emergency department doors and turn my entire world upside down. I had no idea that 3 months of relative peace were about to end in the most dramatic way possible. If this story has already grabbed your attention, go ahead and subscribe to the channel now, because what comes next will surprise you even more. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from? I'd love to know. It was a Friday evening in mid-December when she arrived. The emergency department was moderately busy, nothing we couldn't handle. I was wrapping up with a patient when I heard the triage nurse call out that we had a new arrival in Bay 3. A woman in her early 40s, well-dressed in an expensive coat and designer handbag, complaining of severe abdominal pain, nausea, and dizziness. I grabbed her chart and headed over. Her name was listed as Helen Morrison, a businesswoman from the suburbs. When I pulled back the curtain, I found her lying on the gurney, one arm draped over her eyes, the other clutching her stomach. She looked genuinely distressed, but something about the scene felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. I introduced myself and began my assessment. Standard questions about the pain, when it started, what makes it better or worse, any other symptoms. Helen answered everything appropriately, describing classic symptoms of what could be anything from appendicitis to kidney stones to gastrointestinal issues. But as I took her vital signs, I noticed something strange. Her pain seemed to shift. First it was lower right abdomen, then upper left, then diffuse across her entire stomach. When I palpated her abdomen, her reactions didn't quite match what she was describing. She would wince before I even pressed on an area, or not react at all when I pressed somewhere she had just said was excruciating. I documented everything and ordered the standard workup: blood tests, urinalysis, imaging. While we waited for the results, I tried to get more of her medical history. That's when things got even stranger. Helen claimed she had never been hospitalized before, had no chronic conditions, took no regular medications. But when I asked about allergies, she rattled off a list of at least 8 different medications she claimed to be allergic to. That's unusual. Most people have 1 or 2 medication allergies at most. A long list like that is often a red flag for drug-seeking behavior. But I kept my professional demeanor, documented everything, and continued with the standard protocol. Thank you for sticking with me this far. It shows that you feel the same thing I felt when I lived through all of this. So go ahead and subscribe and turn on notifications, because what comes next changes everything. The test results started coming back, and they were all normal, completely normal. Her blood work showed no signs of infection, no elevated white blood cell count, no indication of appendicitis or any other acute condition. Her urinalysis was clean. The ultrasound showed no kidney stones, no gallstones, no abnormalities in her abdominal organs. Dr. Pemberton came by to review the case with me. He examined Helen briefly, reviewed the test results, and concluded that she likely had gastritis or a mild gastrointestinal upset. Nothing serious. He ordered some anti-nausea medication and pain relief and said she could be discharged once she felt better. But I wasn't convinced. Something about Helen's behavior was bothering me. When I went back to give her the medication, she immediately asked what painkillers I was giving her. I told her it was a standard non-narcotic pain reliever. Her entire demeanor changed. She said that wouldn't work for her, that she needed something stronger, something that would actually help with her level of pain. I explained that given her test results, we were starting with the safest option first. She became agitated, insisting that she knew her own body, that she had severe pain that required serious medication. She started naming specific narcotic painkillers, saying those were the only things that had ever worked for her in the past. Red flags were going off in my mind now. This was classic drug-seeking behavior. I excused myself and found Dr. Pemberton again. I shared my concerns about Helen's behavior, her inconsistent pain presentation, her insistence on specific narcotics. He agreed it was suspicious and said we would stick with the non-narcotic treatment plan. When I returned to Helen with this decision, she exploded. She accused us of not taking her pain seriously, of discriminating against her, of providing substandard care. She demanded to speak to a supervisor, threatened to file complaints, said she would go to the media about how she was being treated. Her performance was dramatic and loud enough that it drew attention from other staff and patients. Security was called to help de-escalate the situation. Now tell me, where are you watching this story from? Write it in the comments. It's incredible to see people from so many places following stories like this. And if you're enjoying this, hit that subscribe button, because this is just the beginning. After about 20 minutes of drama, Helen finally calmed down. She accepted the non-narcotic medication, though she made it clear she was unhappy about it. I checked on her periodically over the next hour. She claimed the medication hadn't helped at all, that she was still in severe pain. But I noticed she was texting on her phone, scrolling through social media, at one point even laughing at something she was reading. Those aren't typically behaviors you see in someone experiencing severe pain. I was documenting all of this in her chart when something unexpected happened. Helen got up to use the bathroom, and as she stood, her expensive designer handbag tipped over on the chair where she had left it. The contents spilled out onto the floor. I immediately moved to help her pick everything up. Lipstick, tissues, hand sanitizer, the usual things you'd expect in a woman's purse. But then I saw something that made me freeze. A wallet had fallen out, and it had opened to show an identification card. But it wasn't an ID for Helen Morrison. The name on the card was Catherine Wells, and the photo was definitely the woman in front of me. Helen, or Catherine, or whoever she was, snatched the wallet up quickly, her face flushing red. She stuffed everything back into her bag without making eye contact with me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said curtly that she needed to use the bathroom and pushed past me. I stood there, my mind racing. Why would she have an ID with a different name? There could be innocent explanations. Maybe it was an old ID from before she got married and changed her name. Maybe it belonged to a sister or friend and somehow ended up in her purse. But combined with everything else I had observed, the inconsistent pain presentation, the drug-seeking behavior, the dramatic reactions, my instincts were screaming that something was very wrong here. I faced a choice. I could ignore what I had seen, respect her privacy, finish her treatment, and send her on her way. Or I could investigate further, potentially violating her privacy, potentially creating another confrontational situation. After everything that had happened 3 months ago, part of me wanted to just let it go. But I couldn't let it go. Something was wrong, and as a healthcare professional, I had a responsibility to figure out what. If this woman was using a fake identity to obtain medications, if she was running some kind of scam, the hospital needed to know. More importantly, if she had a pattern of doing this, other hospitals and healthcare providers needed to be warned. I went to a computer in a quiet area of the department and did something I probably shouldn't have done. I searched for Catherine Wells online. What I found made my blood run cold. There were news articles from 3 different states. Catherine Wells had been accused of medical fraud in multiple jurisdictions. Her pattern was consistent. She would go to emergency rooms, claim severe pain with vague symptoms, and demand specific narcotic medications. When doctors refused or wanted to run more tests, she would create scenes, threaten lawsuits, file complaints. Sometimes she succeeded in getting prescriptions. Sometimes she didn't, but she always moved on to the next hospital, the next city, always using slightly different names, always hard to track. In one case, she had actually gotten admitted to a hospital for 3 days, running up thousands of dollars in medical bills that were never paid, all while receiving narcotic pain medications that she later sold on the street. There were warrants out for her arrest in 2 states, and she was here, right now, in my emergency department, using yet another fake name. I felt sick to my stomach. I printed out the articles and went directly to Dr. Dr. Pemberton. I found him in the staff lounge, grabbing a quick coffee between patients. I closed the door behind me and laid out everything I had discovered. The 2 IDs, the online articles, the pattern of fraud. He read through the printed articles, his expression growing more serious with each page. When he finished, he looked at me and asked if I was absolutely certain this was the same woman. I told him I was. The photo from the articles matched the woman in Bay 3 perfectly. Dr. Pemberton stood up, straightened his coat, and said we needed to inform hospital security and administration immediately. This was bigger than just a difficult patient. This was potential criminal activity happening on hospital property. Within 30 minutes, we had a meeting in a private conference room. Dr. Pemberton and I, the director of hospital security, the nursing supervisor, and the hospital's legal counsel. I presented everything I had found. The 2 names, the articles about medical fraud in other states, the behavioral patterns that matched what we had observed tonight. The security director immediately pulled up additional information. There were indeed active warrants for Catherine Wells in 2 states. The legal counsel warned us to be careful. We needed to handle this properly, follow the correct procedures, or we could open the hospital up to liability. The plan was simple. Security would verify her identity discreetly, contact law enforcement, and we would continue providing appropriate medical care until the police arrived. No confrontation, no drama. Just professional, by-the-book handling of a suspected criminal. But of course, nothing ever goes according to plan. While we were meeting, Helen, or Catherine, had apparently grown impatient. She had demanded to be discharged immediately, claiming she felt better and wanted to leave. When the nurse on duty explained that the doctor hadn't cleared her for discharge yet, she became belligerent again. By the time we got back to the emergency department, she was already attempting to leave against medical advice. Security tried to delay her subtly, saying they just needed her to sign some paperwork. That's when everything fell apart. Catherine looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw recognition in her eyes. She knew. Somehow, she knew that I had figured out who she was. Her face twisted with rage. She started screaming that I had stolen her wallet, that I had gone through her personal belongings, that I was making up lies about her. She yelled that she was going to sue me personally, sue the hospital, go to every news outlet in the city, and tell them how she had been violated and harassed. Other patients and staff were staring. Phones were coming out. People were recording. It was a nightmare scenario. Security tried to calm her down, but she was in full performance mode now. She claimed she was being targeted because of her appearance, her gender, her success. She painted herself as the victim of an overzealous nurse with a hero complex who was trying to make up for past mistakes by manufacturing drama. And the police arrived 20 minutes later, but by then, the damage was done. Catherine had put on such a convincing performance that some of the staff were actually questioning whether I had overreacted. The police detained her for questioning, verified her identity, and confirmed the outstanding warrants. She was arrested on the spot. You would think that would be the end of it, that I would be vindicated, but it was just the beginning of my nightmare. The next morning, the story hit the local news, but it wasn't the story of a wanted criminal being caught. It was the story of a woman who claimed she had been profiled and harassed at a local hospital. Catherine had contacted a reporter before she was arrested. She had spun the entire narrative to make herself look like the victim. The reporter, eager for a sensational story, ran with it. They didn't wait for all the facts. They didn't verify her claims. They just put her accusations on the air. A well-dressed, articulate woman claiming she had been discriminated against, her privacy violated, her belongings rifled through by a nurse who wanted to be a hero. My name wasn't mentioned initially, but within the hospital, everyone knew it was me. The hospital administration went into crisis mode. They put out a statement saying they were investigating the incident, that patient privacy was of utmost importance, that they took all allegations seriously. That statement, meant to protect the hospital, made me look guilty. It implied that maybe I had done something wrong, that my actions were under investigation. Dr. Pemberton tried to defend me, tried to explain to administration what had really happened, but they were more concerned with public relations than with the truth. I was put on paid administrative leave pending an internal review. Paid leave sounds nice, but what it really meant was that I was being benched, kept away from the hospital while they figured out how to handle the media firestorm. I sat at home, watching the news coverage, reading the comments online, feeling helpless and angry. People who had no idea what really happened were calling me names, saying I was a disgrace to the nursing profession, saying I should lose my license, and I couldn't defend myself. The hospital had instructed me not to talk to the media, not to discuss the case publicly. The internal review took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of sitting at home, replaying everything in my mind, wondering if I had made a mistake. Maybe I should have just let her go. Maybe I should have minded my own business. Maybe trying to do the right thing wasn't worth this. My family back in Ohio called constantly, worried about me. My mother wanted me to come home, to leave Cleveland and all this drama behind. Jennifer texted me every day, keeping me updated on what was happening at the hospital. She said the atmosphere was tense. Some nurses supported me, saying I had done the right thing. Others thought I had brought unnecessary attention to the hospital, that I should have handled it differently. Dr. Pemberton, to his credit, never wavered in his support. The review board finally called me in for a hearing. I sat in that same conference room where we had met with security and legal counsel, facing a panel of hospital administrators. They reviewed my actions step by step. Why had I searched the patient's belongings? I explained that the wallet had fallen, that I saw the ID accidentally while helping clean up. Why had I conducted an online search of the patient? I explained that I had reasonable suspicion of fraudulent activity and a responsibility to protect the hospital and other potential victims. Why hadn't I gone through proper channels before investigating? I explained that everything happened quickly, that I had reported to my supervisor and Dr. Pemberton as soon as I had information to report. The questions went on for 2 hours. At the end of it, they told me they would deliberate and let me know their decision within a week. I walked out of that building feeling defeated. Even if they cleared me, even if they said I had done nothing wrong, my reputation was damaged. The news story was out there. My name was out there. Some people would always believe Catherine's version of events, no matter what the facts showed. I drove home, went inside my apartment, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I broke down and cried. I cried for the unfairness of it all. I cried because doing the right thing had cost me so much. I cried because I didn't know if I could keep being the kind of nurse who spoke up when it was easier to stay silent. But then something unexpected happened. Dr. Pemberton called me. He said he had been doing his own investigation, contacting other hospitals in the region, talking to colleagues in different states. He had found 6 other emergency departments where Catherine Wells, using various names, had pulled similar scams. He had medical records showing patterns of behavior identical to what we had observed. He had statements from other healthcare professionals who had dealt with her. And he had compiled all of this into a comprehensive report that he was submitting not just to our hospital administration, but to law enforcement and medical licensing boards. He told me he was putting his own reputation on the line to support me, because what I had done was right, and he would be damned if he was going to let me go down for it. His support meant everything, but it was what happened next that really changed things. One of the other hospitals he had contacted, a facility in Pennsylvania, had security footage of Catherine creating a similar scene there 6 months earlier. In that footage, you could clearly see her deliberately staging her symptoms, see her switching between appearing in pain and being completely fine when she thought no one was watching. That footage went viral. Suddenly the narrative shifted. News outlets that had run Catherine's story started running corrections. They showed the footage from Pennsylvania. They interviewed doctors and nurses from other hospitals who had encountered her. The truth was finally coming out, and with it came vindication for me. The hospital's internal review concluded that I had acted appropriately given the circumstances. They issued a public statement clearing me of any wrongdoing and apologizing for the delay in making that determination. They offered me my position back with full support. But the real turning point came when the district attorney's office held a press conference. They announced that Catherine Wells was being charged with multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and attempted procurement of controlled substances. They credited the vigilance of healthcare professionals, specifically mentioning our hospital, with finally stopping her pattern of criminal behavior. The reporter, who had initially run her story without fact-checking, had to air a retraction and apology. I returned to work on a cold January morning, almost exactly a month after Catherine Wells had walked into our emergency department. The staff greeted me with applause when I walked in. It was embarrassing and touching at the same time. Dr. Pemberton was there, waiting for me, and he did something completely unexpected. He hugged me. This man who had been so cold and distant just months ago, who had been furious when I first challenged him over David Torres, actually hugged me in front of the entire emergency department staff. He told me I had taught him something important, that doing the right thing isn't just about being brave in the moment. It's about having the courage to stand by your convictions even when the world turns against you. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I gave statements to law enforcement. I was interviewed by medical journals about the importance of vigilance in healthcare settings. I even spoke at a nursing conference about recognizing patterns of medical fraud. But through all of it, I kept coming back to a simple truth. Being a nurse isn't just about clinical skills and medical knowledge. It's about being willing to see what others might miss, to ask uncomfortable questions, to stand up for what's right even when it costs you something. David Torres taught me to trust my instincts in the moment. Catherine Wells taught me to trust my convictions over the long haul. Both lessons were painful. Both lessons were necessary. My relationship with the hospital changed after that. I wasn't just respected anymore. I was trusted in a deeper way. When difficult ethical situations arose, I was often consulted. When new nurses started, they were told my story as an example of what it means to be a patient advocate. Dr. Pemberton and I became more than than just colleagues. We became friends. He told me once, over coffee in the hospital cafeteria, that I had changed him, that before meeting me, he had believed medicine was about knowledge and skill, but I had shown him that it was also about character and courage. Coming from him, that meant more than any award or recognition could. As for Catherine Wells, she was convicted on multiple charges and sentenced to several years in prison. I never saw her again after that night in the emergency department. But I think about her sometimes. I wonder what led her down that path, what desperation or addiction drove her to such extremes. I don't hate her. I actually feel sorry for her. Because while I was fighting for my reputation, she was fighting demons I can't even imagine. In the end, I learned that doing the right thing doesn't guarantee a happy ending. It doesn't protect you from consequences or criticism, but it does let you sleep at night. It does let you look at yourself in the mirror and know that you stayed true to who you are. And in a world that's constantly trying to compromise your values, that's worth fighting for. So now I want to ask you something. How far would you go to defend the truth? Would you risk everything, your career, your reputation, your name, to do what's right even when everyone doubts you? Tell me in the comments. I want to know what you would do in this situation. Your perspective matters, and hearing different viewpoints helps all of us grow. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel to follow more real stories from healthcare professionals facing moral and ethical dilemmas every single day. These are the stories that don't make the evening news, the quiet acts of courage that happen in hospitals across the country. And don't forget to watch the next recommended video. There's another incredible story waiting for you. Thank you for being here with me through this journey.